Hello and welcome. I'm your host Luke, and today I'll be going over the legend of Mount Shasta, a mountain in California that is shrouded in mystery. Before I get into it, this awesome piece of artwork is a painting that I had commissioned by H.J. Arts. Link in the description to their Facebook page. Go and show them some love. So with that, let's get started. Mountains have always enthralled and inspired awe in mankind since time unremembered. We have lived in their shadow, worshipped at their feet, spun epic legends about them, feared them, revered them, and sacrificed to them. They have been the muse for countless artists, writers, and philosophers for thousands of years, and inspired adventurers to push past their limits to ascend them. Mountains have also long drawn to them countless inexplicable mysteries and myths that gravitate around their craggy, cloud-covered peaks and taunt those of us who would try and understand them. Although there are many deeply mysterious mountains in the world, one that surely stands out as exceptional is North California's Mount Shasta, a mountain which seems to know no ends to the depths of bizarreness, from ancient lost civilizations, UFOs, Bigfoot, strange creatures, anomalous people, and numerous other unexplained phenomena. Mount Shasta is just dripping with high strangeness. So let's explore this weird, wonderful, and indeed often surreal world of this mystical mountain realm. There can be no doubt that Mount Shasta casts a rather startling, imposing presence for those who first lay eyes upon it. Lying within the southern end of the Cascade Range in Siskiyou County, California, Mount Shasta is a now dormant volcano which soars 14,000 feet over the surrounding forested valley, making it the second highest peak of the Cascade Range and the fifth highest mountain in all of California. Since Mount Shasta is not connected to any other surrounding nearby mountains, it stands alone, bursting abruptly and steeply from the ground like some mystical solitary giant to loom over the majestic valleys of green around it and completely dominate the landscape of Northern California. It is said that the massive, rather intimidating lone mountain can be seen from up to 140 miles away on a clear day, making it a striking natural monolith which has captured the admiration and imagination of mankind for centuries. The naturalist John Muir famously said of the spectacular mountain upon first seeing it in 1874, "I was 50 miles away, afoot, alone, and weary. Yet all of my blood turned to wine, and I have not been weary since." Considering its solitary dominating presence, appearance out of seemingly nowhere, and steep, almost pyramid-like shape, which often attracts an ethereal, whirling crown of frequently oddly shaped clouds, is perhaps no surprise that Mount Shasta has long been the origin of numerous fantastic tales, myths, and legends since the very first Native American tribes who inhabited the region since thousands of years ago. The Modoc, Wintu, Akumawi, and Atsuwagi tribes all have once inhabited the area within the shadow of Mount Shasta, and all considered the looming mountain to be a deeply sacred place, which was considered too powerful for humans to actually live on, and which spawned various legends from each tribe. The native Modocs, for instance, believed that the mountain was inhabited by the great spirit Skell, who was the spirit of the above world and had created the mountain as a stepping stone from heaven, where he dwelled at the summit overlooking his domain far below. Skell was said to have frequent epic battles with his enemy, Lao, the spirit of the below world and darkness, who inhabited Mount Mazama in Oregon. It was said that Skell would hurl intensely hot boulders and fiery lava at his nemesis in a fury, and that this ultimately led to the eruption of Mount Mazama, which subsequently formed the volcanic basin of Crater Lake, a place that became known to the tribes as the domain of all evil, while Mount Shasta was revered as a land of blessings. The mountain is also the source of countless other Native American tales and legends, many of which were chronicled by the writer Joaquin Miller, who spent some time living amongst these people in his 1873 opus, Life Amongst the Modocs, Unwritten History. Other Native legends have swirled around the mountain for generations. It was once believed to go up the mountain past the tree line was to invite doom, as therein was the realm of the dead, the shaman, the damned, and a mystical race of evil dwarves feared by the Wintu tribe. Mount Shasta was also said to be prowled by numerous spirits and magical beings, not all of them particularly benevolent, and was also the purported location of portals to other realms of existence. Curiously, many of the tribes here have stories which speak of encountering a tribe of people that they called the Shasta people, who were described as being shorter and darker than the Native Americans, and who had inhabited the region since long before their arrival. The legends say that these Shasta people were ruled by a great king from a mysterious land that existed far out over the Western Ocean, and that they had chosen this locale because the mountain's snowy peak reminded them of their home. When the Native American tribes came, it is said that the Shasta people were eventually driven out and went off to try and seek out their original homeland, which they lamented because it had been submerged by the sea. This is as to one theory as to where the name Mount Shasta came from. Although there are others, and the mountain had been known by many names over its history of human habitation, including Yet by the Akumawi and Atsuagi, Beham Puyak by the Wintu, and Melakishi by the Modoc. By the time the gold rush came around, it was known by various names such as Shasti, Shaste, and many others, with the modern day spelling of Shasta coming about in 1850, when it was chosen as the name of the county by the California State Legislature. Legends, myths, and strange tales of the unknown permeating Mount Shasta are certainly not confined to the old Native American lore, and right up into the modern day, the majestic peak has been steeped in stories of all manner of high strangeness, so much so that it is hard to decide where to even begin. Perhaps the most enduring, well-known, and indeed most bizarre of these is that the mountain harbors an ancient, secret city inhabited by the descendants of the Lemurians, which are the highly technologically advanced people who are said to have been the first humans on Earth and lived on a lost sunken continent known as Lemuria. The name Lemuria was coined in the mid-19th century to denote a hypothetical sunken continent that once bridged the Indian Ocean and was so named because it was speculated that it was through this mysterious continent that lemurs had migrated from Madagascar to India. The story goes that as their continent sank due to some unspecified cataclysmic event, which some circles say was the very same that sunk the more well-known Atlantis, and their civilization lay in ruin, a number of Lemurians escaped to Mount Shasta to establish the city of Telos, somewhere under the mountain, where they recreated their once great society and purportedly continue to live to this very day. The Lemurians are typically described as being graceful, thin, ethereal beings who are very tall, up to 7 feet in height, with fair skin, long, luxurious hair, and abnormally long necks, which they are said to decorate with collars made of beads, golds, or other precious stones. The strange beings are usually clad in flowing white robes and sandals, although they are sometimes said to wear tunics or even walk about in the nude. They are said to have mastered various advanced technologies such as atomic energy, magnetism, electronics, and some say even the ability to alter space-time itself thousands of years ago. And they are believed to possess great levitating airships, which they use for transportation. It is even claimed that they illuminate their subterranean realm with an artificial miniature sun powered by some unknown powerful energy source. The Lemurians are also purported to have a walnut-sized organ of some sort which protrudes from their foreheads and supposedly imbues them with vast psychic powers such as ESP, telekinesis, telepathy, the ability to appear and disappear at will, and the power to influence the minds of others. The theories of Lemurians living within Mount Shasta has a history almost as odd as the purported beings themselves. The whole tale can probably best be traced its beginnings back to a book called A Dweller on Two Planets, which was written by Frederick S. Oliver in 1899. In the summer of 1883, a teenage Oliver had been helping his family mark the boundaries of their mining claim, which entailed driving wooden stakes into the ground and marking their location in a notebook. Allegedly, at some point during this arduous task, Oliver's hand began to shake and convulse uncontrollably and started to write down things seemingly of its own volition. The boy ran home in his panic, his hand continuing to act of its own accord, writing feverishly the entire way, and as soon as he arrived, his mother gave him a more paper to write on. The initial Caesars stopped shortly after, revealing the beginnings of a text. Over the next 3 years, Oliver's hand would occasionally be overcome by this mysterious force, writing several pages here and there until finally in 1895 he had completed an entire book which chronicled and described the existence of the secret Lemurian city and their history. Oliver would go on to claim that he had been chosen by the Lemurians as their secretary of sorts, and that the whole book had been telepathically channeled through him and onto the paper via automatic writing. Oliver further even went so far as to claim that he had been taken astrally to the city itself and had seen it with his own eyes, describing it as being deep within the mountain and comprised of vast warrens of tunnel with secret automatic doors, elegant architecture, and apartments plated with gold and carpeted with a luxurious fleecy substance. Indeed, the entire city was said by Oliver to be generously decked out in crystals, gold, silver, bronze, and precious stones, the whole of which was powered by crystal energies, brightly illuminated, and was inaccessible to outsiders without the express invitation of the Lemurians themselves. High technology was said to abound in this fantastical cities, with numerous mentions of various incredible gadgets and vehicles employed by the city's residents, including large cigar-shaped airships which hovered overhead. The book was quite groundbreaking and ahead of its time when it was released, making mentions of such high-concept notions as quantum mechanics, anti-gravity, mass transit, and zero-point energy, which he called dark side energy, all of which were extremely unique concepts at the time. Although Oliver died in 1899 at the age of 33, his bizarre book was finally published in 1905 by his mother, Mary Elizabeth Manley Oliver. At the time of the publication of Oliver's book, it became an instant occult classic and an openly acknowledged source for many New Age belief systems, sects, and cults. It would even spawn a sequel entitled An Earth Dweller's Return, but it would certainly not be the last literary mention the strange lost city of the Lemurians on Mount Shasta. In fact, in 1931, Harvey Spencer Lewis, using the pseudonym Weiser Spenley Survey, also wrote a whole book on the phenomenon, which further launched its popularity, the idea of lost cities and societies lurking within the depths of the mountain. From here, the accounts of this strange race of powerful beings and their highly sophisticated city of Telos really took off. Many more accounts purporting the Lemurian civilization would surface over the years. In the May 22nd, 1932 edition of the LA Times, there appeared to be the odd account of a Mr. Edward Lanzer who had been passing Mount Shasta in a train when he claimed to have seen the whole south side of the mountain blaze to life with a brilliant, almost blinding, strange reddish-green illumination. When he asked the train conductor what it was that he had seen, he was assured that it had been the work of the Lemurians. The perplexed Lanzer later went on to investigate the strange light further and purportedly asked locals from the area's towns about what he had seen, to which they replied that there was a mysterious community of people living within the mountain who were known to perform rituals in the early morning and the evening, which made use of strange sources of brilliant light that could have explained the sighting. Ceremony was allegedly known as the ceremony of Adoration to Guatama, with Guatama being the Lemurian word for America, and the ceremony celebrating their ancestors' arrival on the continent after their own had tragically been swallowed beneath the waves. It was explained that these ceremonies use extremely bright sources of mysterious light, which were known to light up the whole side of the mountain. And the locals also said that the Lemurians were known to come down from their secretive mountain realm from time to time, towering, odd-looking folk clad in their white robes and barefoot, who would buy huge amounts of sulfur, salt, and lard, which they would always pay for in gold nuggets that far exceeded the value of the merchandise. When Lanzer made known his intentions to go up the mountain and find these Lemurians and the source of light he had seen, Lanzer lamented that the local officials and ranchers freely ridiculed my avowed trek into the sacred precincts, assuring me that an entrance was as difficult and forbidden as an entrance into Tibet. The hopes of ever finding the city dashed, Lanzer seemingly gave up on his quest, and it is unknown what exactly became of him, and whether he finally found what he was searching for, or merely faded into obscurity. In the June 27th, 1940 edition of the Mount Shasta Herald, William Bridge Cook wrote of a Professor Edward L. Larkin, who claimed to have observed the mystical city at great length through his telescope on several occasions. Larkin had allegedly discovered the city by accident as he was calibrating his telescope and spied something shining anomalously on the mountain. Finding this to be peculiar, he then focused on the object and found it to be an enormous Oriental-style temple, which he described as a marvelous work of carved marble and onyx, rivaling in architectural splendor the magnificence of the temples of the Yucatan. Larkin would go on to claim to have seen other temples on the mountainside, as well, including ones in an apparent Greek style, with magnificent shining white marble columns. In addition to mentioning the opulent architecture, Larkin also claimed that the vicinity of the temples would often be beset by mysterious bright lights in the evening hours, and claimed that the temples and lights were from the descendants of the Lemurian people. He said of these lights, their display of light far excels our modern electrical achievements, and I am, for one, consumed with curiosity to know how these people can produce such amazing light effects. In an odd twist, Larkin then apparently became sidetracked by other work and was never able to locate the temples he had seen again. Cook, for his part, then proceeds to spend most of the rest of the article trying to actively debunk the claim through the standpoint that it would have been physically impossible for Larkin to see what he claimed from his particular vantage point, but it is still a curious account nonetheless. The Lemurians were also claimed to be able to influence their environment and to exhibit extraordinary architectural know-how. A 1962 edition of the Australian Flying Saucer Review mentions in an article by Andrew Thomas the curious case of a forest fire in 1931 which ravaged much of the mountain, yet was kept from advancing by the appearance of a mysterious fog which halted the blaze in its tracks. In the aftermath of the fire, it was reportedly discovered that there was a perfectly clear and curved demarcation zone remaining between the charred earth and undamaged areas. It is said by locals that this was the Lemurians protecting their domain through some unknown technological wizardry. Likewise, it is said that their city and structures are impervious to the effects of the many earthquakes that ravaged the region, such as their architectural skill, and perhaps even due to their alleged ability to control the earth itself. These Lemurian people and their strange devices have long been seen in the area right up to the present, with sightings and accounts too numerous to list here. Typically, they are seen walking along roads or even city streets of towns on Mount Shasta, only to suddenly disappear as if they were never there at all, presumably due to their psychic abilities and uncanny expert knack for blending into their surroundings. Often they are only glimpsed from the periphery of vision and elude any efforts to spot them straight on. They are sometimes known to appear to help farmers who have fallen on hard times using some sort of advanced agricultural techniques that revive the soil as if by magic. One account tells of a Lemurian woman who emerged from the forest in full view of a group of people and proceeded to lie down in the frigid water of Panther Springs for a full 5 minutes before silently getting back up and walking into the wilderness from whence she'd come, all the while dripping wet in the nude from the freezing water. There are also numerous sightings of a strange boat, which is said to sail as far as the Aleutian Islands and will approach shore only to suddenly hover in the air and make its way towards Mount Shasta. One old account even mentions a visit to San Francisco by a white robed patriarch said to represent the community of the Lemurians. It was joined by an entourage of younger men and actually supposedly met with city officials to bring a message of greetings and goodwill during World War I. Tells of people actually entering the wondrous, bejeweled Lemurian city abound as well, as Dr. M. Doriel claimed that he had penetrated into the mountain lair of the Lemurians and saw what he described as an enormous cavern that was an astounding 20 miles long, 15 miles wide, and 2 miles high, which is illuminated by a gigantic, blazing, artificial sun right in its center. Yet another account mentions a man who fell asleep on the mountain, only to be awakened by a Lemurian, then brought him to a magnificent city paved with gold. One of the strangest stories of finding an underground city within Mount Shasta comes from a 1904 account, which first appeared in the 1934 edition of the Stockton Record concerning a J.C. Brown, a British prospector who had come to the mountain with the Lord Cowdery Mining Company to prospect for gold. During this expedition, Brown allegedly stumbled across a tunnel in the hillside which led down into the darkness below the mountain. The prospector decided to venture into the opening and found that it stretched over several miles into the murk and ended in a complex of rooms full of ornate statues, crystals, shields, and gold and copper plates. There was also purportedly an enigmatic and extravagantly decorated burial chamber containing at least 27 mummies that were described as being between 6'6" to 10 feet in height, several of which were wrapped in some sort of ornamental robes. The discovery was touted by Brown as being one of the most exciting archaeological finds of the century, and eventually an expedition led by John C. Root and comprised of 80 members was brought together to further explore the tunnel based off these claims. However, on June 19th, 1934, the day the expedition was set out from Stockton, California, J.C. Brown did not show up, and in fact he was never seen from again. It is a remarkable story to be sure, but seems highly suspicious since the find was allegedly made in 1904, yet the story was not made public until 1934. What happened in the intervening 3 decades? Although no modern explorers have from time to time claimed to have found the mysterious tunnel, its location indeed, whether it ever even really existed at all, remained a total mystery. Who are these alleged Lemurians? Survivors of a long lost continent? Aliens? Interdimensional beings? Nothing at all? Is there any truth whatsoever to these accounts? The mention of underground caves and caverns certainly seems to fit in with Native American legends, which tell of many vast complexes of hidden tunnels and bottomless pits scattered throughout the mountain. Indeed, the area is quite known for its caves and tunnels, so this could have something to do with the start of these stories. However, it is unknown if Lemurians, or any people for that matter, have ever actually gone down and inhabited them. Although the Lemurians of Mount Shasta are generally seen to be benevolent and non-violent, the same cannot be said of the truly outlandish tale of what are known as the Daros, short for degenerate robots, which were said to be Lemurian robots who had gone insane and become malevolent machines bent on murder, mayhem, and destruction. The Daros tale was popularized in the 1940s by Richard Shaver, who had believed them to be the source of all of mankind's woes. As completely absurd as this may all sound, there was an interesting story related by researcher and author David Paulids about a young child who went missing while on a camping trip with his parents on the mountain in 2011. The boy apparently suddenly disappeared without a trace and was not found for 5 hours, after which the shaken child came back with an extremely weird story to tell. According to him, he had been abducted by an evil robot that had looked and sounded just like his grandma and taken to a huge underground cave populated by other human-looking robots as well as giant spiders. The real grandmother claimed to have woken up face down on the ground feeling violently ill and with a small puncture wound on the back of her neck, presumably so that the robot could steal the genetic information that it needed to duplicate her appearance. As far out as all this may sound, Shaver's bizarre theories actually gained quite a bit of traction in their day and were used by hollow earth theorists and UFOologists extensively at the time. Although these theories eventually fell out of favor, partially due to their complete off-the-wall oddness, one interesting piece of the story was Shaver's claim that he had deciphered their language, which he insisted all Earth languages derived from. This strange claim is made even stranger by the fact that the complex language and writing system presented by him, as well as the cipher itself, are actually considered to be enormously detailed, meticulous, and quite linguistically accurate. Was this all just the ramblings of a madman with an obsessive slavish devotion to even the most minor details? Or is there something more to it? Many would probably consider him to be a crackpot. He most certainly likely it was, but he was not the only one who was categorized as such. Indeed, the mountain seems to be a haven for such mysterious, indeed some could say slightly off, kilter people. In 1930, an American mining engineer by the name of Guy Warren Ballard came to Mount Shasta, and while out hiking one day, claimed he came across a man in the wood who identified himself as none other than Comte de Saint Germain, a German courtier and mystic from the early 18th century, who some have theorized was actually immortal. Ballard went on to report having several encounters with him, who told him he was an ascended master, or a spiritually enlightened being who was immortal, free of the cycles of re-embodiment and karma, and endowed with vast magical powers. These ascended masters considered Jesus Christ among their ranks, and many were said to live reclusively among the Cascades. During these encounters, Ballard claimed that Saint Germain had taken him to various caves and magical places upon the mountain to teach him the way towards enlightenment. Ballard would later go on to write extensively of his meetings with this mystical figure in a series of books called Unveiled Mysteries and the Magic Presence under the pen name Godfrey Rake King. And he went on to give lectures on these mystical experiences. This would all become the foundation upon which he would build a spiritual movement called I Am Activity, which described itself as an apolitical, espoused list of teachings showing the path to enlightenment called the Ascended Master Teachings, and which is still active in the area to this very day. Adding to the list of enigmatic people who have found some kind of revelation, here's a man who in 2011 went missing off the Pacific Crest Trail in the Mount Shasta wilderness for several weeks. When he suddenly returned as mysteriously as he had vanished, he claimed that while hiking he had heard the sound of a woman singing and gone off and was abducted and taken to a cave where he was stripped of all his clothing. After that, he reportedly was approached by a tall and beautiful woman with unnaturally piercing blue eyes, who even gave him some sort of secret information, which he would not divulge the nature of when asked. After this ordeal, the man went on to change his name to Lord Kalki and insisted that he was an incarnation of a messianic Hindu god. One enduring belief about the mountain is that it serves as an extremely potent and powerful energy source, and is crisscrossed with ley lines which are intersecting paths of energy, similar to what is said about Stonehenge. All this mysterious energy purportedly has a variety of astounding effects, such as revitalizing the spirit, enabling deep meditation, creating feelings of euphoria, causing vision quests, healing the body, bestowing profound spiritual guidance, allowing interdimensional travel or passage into the metaphysical realm, enhancing one's ability to astrally project or to channel spirits, and inspiring creativity, among others. Well, no matter what your opinion of these might be, enough people do believe them that these supposed vortices have made Mount Shasta a mecca for New Agers, spiritualists, Wiccans, cults, and all manner of those seeking some sort of spiritual revelation who have flocked to Mount Shasta in droves. In fact, the mountain's main town, with a population of only 3,300, boasts around 100 spiritualist sects and no fewer than 38 New Age businesses, with 25% of the tourists who pass through coming for spiritual reasons or to reap some benefit from the vortex of energy. In town, such visitors can enjoy spiritual healings, vision quests, shamanic awakenings, take spiritual attunement workshops, purchase crystals purportedly imbued with a variety of powers, or even take spiritual tours of the mountain, its vortices, or even the lost Lemurian city of Telos itself. Of course, with so many New Age businesses on offer and so many people traveling to this retreat, it's an attractive destination for con artists to cash in on people's willingness to believe. The author Joaquin Miller once magnificently described Mount Shasta thusly: lonely as God and white as a winter moon. Mount Shasta starts up, sudden and solitary, from the heart of the great black forests of Northern California. Is that what is at work here? The sheer splendor of this mountain working away on our imagination, with the breathtaking sight of this lone colossus stirring up deep within our psyche to create these feelings of grandiosity, natural splendor, and perhaps in the case of the bizarreness reported here, the conviction that such a place would never be confined to the mundane world of a mere mountain composed of craggy rock and earth, and must therefore be something more. Or are these sentiments of unbridled awe that Mount Shasta seems to be able to invoke within us, simply creating grand legends, myths, and a legacy of aching desire for there to be something from beyond our world at work here that have all just sort of spiraled out of control and then come crashing together to congeal into the web of Mount Shasta's mysteries? Or is there truly some unknown force and work here beyond our current ability to explain? Although we may never have the answers we seek or see enough through these impenetrable enigmas, we have plenty of time to search, as Mount Shasta will continue to remain, as it always has, a forlorn, lonely God surveying its vast domain, perhaps the end of time itself. So, to end this, where are any of the sources for this stuff? I'll link below where I got this information, but you search Google for any of this stuff and you can't find it, so good luck. I don't know, but I hope you guys have a great day. If you want to tell me something about this, leave it below in the comments, and make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more stuff like this. Follow us on Twitter at LNJ Chillin' with the Grays. This has been your host Luke, and I hope you guys have a great day. Bye.